In the year 2249, humanity was locked in a bitter, exhausting war with the Krill, a powerful, technologically advanced race whose society valued strength and ruthlessness above all else. The Krill Empire had spread through countless star systems, often leaving devastation in its wake. Their soldiers were raised to see weakness as a defect, and those who couldn't keep up were often discarded. On a desolate planet, ravaged by months of battle, a small team of human soldiers scoured the landscape, searching for survivors and supplies. Lieutenant Jake Mercer, a battle-hardened but compassionate soldier, led his team with a steady resolve. They had seen countless horrors in the war and were well accustomed to the brutality of the Krill. As they trudged through the barren remains of an abandoned Krill base, they found something that caught them off guard. A small, barely breathing Krill girl, her scales dulled with grime and blood, lying amidst the wreckage. She couldn't have been more than 10 years old, and her faint heartbeat barely registered on their scanners. Lieutenant, one of Jake's teammates muttered, "It's a Krill kid. Probably got left behind. We should keep moving. They're our enemy, remember?" But Jake couldn't just walk away. He looked at the girl, helpless, abandoned, left to die in a desolate land by her own people. She was barely more than a child. "Orders or not," Jake said quietly, "she's not an enemy. Not now." Ignoring his team's hesitant protests, he lifted the small alien into his arms, wrapping her in his jacket to keep her warm. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open for a brief moment, filled with fusion and above all exhaustion. "It's okay," Jake whispered, as gently as he could. "You're safe. I've got you." Chapter 1: A Fragile Peace. Jake's team set up a makeshift shelter as night fell, his fellow soldiers watching him with a mix of skepticism and curiosity as he cared for the young Krill. Her name, as Jake learned in the quiet moments between her fits of sleep, was Lyra. Her voice was weak, her body frail. She had been left behind when her clan retreated, deemed too small, too weak to be worth saving. She looked at Jake with wary, alien eyes, her gaze flickering over his human features with an intensity that spoke of both fear and fascination. She had never seen a human up close, and he, likewise, had never encountered a Krill in any moment of peace. Over the next few days, Jake did his best to gain her trust, offering her small bits of food, making sure she had water, and treating her wounds. She was resilient, he noticed, and her spirit began to show despite the injuries. She slowly began to understand that Jake and his team weren't going to harm her, even though they were the so-called enemy. Jake's teammates grew to tolerate Lyra's presence, though it wasn't easy. They had all lost friends and family in the war. But seeing Jake, their usually stoic commander, show kindness to the little alien girl had a surprising effect on them. They started to see her less as an enemy and more as an innocent caught in a war she had no say in. Chapter 2: Bridging Two Worlds. As they traveled back to the human base, Lyra slowly began to open up. She was curious, despite her initial fear, about these strange humans who cared for her when her own people would not. She began asking Jake questions, her voice still shaky, but filled with a spark of life that hadn't been there before. "Why did you save me?" she asked one night as they huddled around a fire. Her voice was hesitant, her eyes reflecting the flickering flames. "My people, they wouldn't have saved you." Jake thought for a moment. "I guess I don't see you as just a Krill. I see you as someone who needed help, someone who was left alone, and that's not right no matter where you come from." Lyra looked away, her gaze distant. "Weakness is shameful. My people think only the strong should survive." "Well, maybe strength is about more than just power," Jake replied. "Sometimes strength is choosing kindness, even when it's hard." Her eyes searched his face, trying to comprehend this strange, alien philosophy. She had been taught all her life that power meant survival, that compassion was a flaw. Yet here was this human who had risked his life to help her, and his kindness had given her a new perspective on strength. As the days passed, Lyra's health improved, and her spirit grew stronger. Jake taught her some human phrases, and in return, she taught him fragments of her language. It was a small bridge, but it connected them. Chapter 3: A Bond Beyond Borders. One night, as they approached the human base, Jake was alerted to incoming transmissions. Reports indicated that a Krill scouting party had been seen nearby. They were close enough to detect a human presence and would be upon them soon. Jake knew that if the Kurill found Lyra with them, they would treat her as an outcast or worse. He had learned enough about their culture to know that once someone was labeled weak, they were discarded or even punished as a burden on the clan. But he also knew that if he brought Lyra into the human base, she would be seen as an enemy, a prisoner of war, or even a spy. It was a heartbreaking choice. As the Krill scouts drew nearer, Jake and Lyra shared a final, meaningful conversation. He knelt beside her, looking into her eyes. "Lyra," he said gently, "I can't take you with me. My people won't understand, but if I let you go, maybe your clan will give you another chance." She looked back at him, her alien features softening in an expression he had come to recognize as sadness. You are the first one who didn't see me as weak," she said, her voice wavering. "You're the first one who saw me as someone worth saving." Jake took her hand and squeezed it gently. "Remember that, Lyra. No matter what anyone else says, you're strong in a way that matters. Don't ever forget that." He gave her a small pendant from his uniform, a simple token, but one she could carry as a reminder of their bond. With a final, heartfelt look, Lyra nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. She turned and disappeared into the darkness, heading toward her own kind. Epilogue: A New Hope. Weeks passed. The war continued, brutal and unyielding, but Jake never forgot the little Krill girl he had saved. He wondered if she was safe, if she remembered his words. He hoped that maybe, somehow, the kindness they had shared would leave a mark on her. Months later, in a rare moment of ceasefire, an unexpected transmission arrived at the human base. It was encrypted in Krill language, but it carried a symbol, a simple drawing of a pendant, much like the one Jake had given Lyra. Accompanying it were coordinates and a brief message. "Thank you. I will remember." Against all odds, Jake knew Lyra had survived, and somewhere deep within the enemy's ranks, a young Krill girl carried forward a new understanding of strength, one built on compassion and kindness, taught to her by a brave human soldier. Perhaps in time that understanding would spread, a small spark of hope in a galaxy torn by war, because sometimes a single act of compassion could change more than a life. It could change the future.